Let's see. Is it working? It looks like it's working. What's happening, everybody? What is going on, my friends, hypesters, hypeneers, hypenics, hype enthusiasts of all ages? Welcome to the HypeHype Livestream. I am Shogun. In my cave again this week. Coming at you from Shogun's cave. It is the HypeHype Livestream. Sorry, my brain, it's not caught up to the fact that I'm speaking to people live on the internet quite yet. Apologize for that. How's everybody doing today? Hope you guys are having a great Thursday. Today on the stream, for those of you that have been around for a little while, we might be covering some familiar ground, but for those of you that are new to HypeHype, hopefully I'm going to give you a nice overview of everything you need to know about the app to start playing, creating, and sharing your own games here on HypeHype. That's going to be the main content for the stream today. And then, of course, at the end, something that I think some of you are probably pretty interested in, we will be announcing a new jam at the end of the stream today. So that's what's going down in the hood on the HypeHype stream today. How's everybody doing today? Welcome to the chat. I see videos. Hematoma. Hey, Judd Christopher. Mika. Welcome to the stream. Hope you guys are having a great day. Sophia, I see you there too. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Thursday. And I guess with that, we're probably just going to jump right into it here and start talking about HypeHype. Angela, hello. Hello. And Mika says, more updates and Badland Brawl on HypeHype. I don't know about Badland Brawl on HypeHype. I mean, you could try and build it yourself. But of course, we are in early access, so there will be many, many, many updates coming to the app. We are trying to update it pretty frequently, but it really depends on what's going down behind the scenes. But there's definitely many, many updates in the future of HypeHype, so don't you worry about that. John Christopher likes the beanie. Thank you. These are new. We just got these a couple days ago. Everybody really excited to be representing the HypeHype at the office. Hypesy says, Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you too. And everybody else watching from the United States, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you guys are having a great holiday. So let's jump in here before I just spend too much time just chatting with you guys in the chat. Let's switch over to where we have gameplay here. All right, so first up, we're just going to do a quick overview. What is HypeHype? So HypeHype is an app for your phone or your tablet. You can also use it on a web browser on your PC or Macintosh computer if that is what you're into. But it is designed primarily to work on mobile devices. Today I'm going to be using an iPad. You could also use iPhone, Android phone, any sort of tablet that runs either of those two operating systems. And if you're running some other operating system, I guess it'll probably still work in the browser on your tablet or phone. So the general idea of HypeHype is that... how loud is that music? Let's see. It does seem like it's fighting with my voice a little bit. I'm going to turn that down just a smidge. The basic idea is that you can come, you can create games, you can share games, and of course you can play other people's games. What I'm looking at right here now is the main feed, and I can just swipe through here and I see games made by other people. Probably a pretty familiar interface for some of you. We can like stuff here, we can comment on stuff, we can of course share. And then one of the big features of HypeHype is the remix feature. I'm not going to go into it too much quite yet, but you can at any time on any hype hit the remix, and now I've opened this hype in the editor and I can start editing it and make my own version of it however I please. But also, before we get into the creating, You can swipe, you can find games, you find something that looks interesting, you just hit play, you can start playing immediately, you don't have to download anything, it's right there. And now I'm this, I don't know what kind of creature this is supposed to be, like a deer or something? I'm fighting zombies. There's a cat there. And I got a key. So this is a game made by somebody at home, on their tablet, on their phone. Oh snap, there's a giant zombie there. And I guess there's another key, yep. Oh no, I'm not gonna fight that zombie, I'm just gonna run away. Because now there's a finish line. Now I've completed the hype, I won. Nice. Alright, so that's the basics of HypeHype, right? You come in, you can scroll, you can like stuff, you can follow stuff. You can, of course, if you see something you really like, you can go to that creators page. Why won't it go to the... There it goes. You can go to that creators page. You can follow that creator. Check out what else they've been working on. All that good stuff. So now let's get into the real goods. Creating stuff, right? That's what we want to see. So if you want to create, the easiest way, right here at the bottom in the middle of the screen, you can tap on this create button. And that'll bring us to the create page. So on the create page here at the top, you have, on the left, it'll have the last hype you played. So you can go and you can remix that hype if you want. In the middle here, we have the blank canvas, which just has this green box in the middle of it. I didn't actually mean to click on that. And then on the right here, you can actually create a playlist. We'll get into that a little bit later as well. There's a banner here or a carousel here that shows you a few banners, things that's going on. Like, for example, this stream that you're watching right now. Some new characters. And the HypeHype Discord, great place to go if you want to learn more about building games in HypeHype. And then, of course, down here we have a lot of templates and things that you can use to get yourself started. You don't necessarily need to start from scratch. We've got a ton of templates here of different game types, different game modes, and there's more coming all the time. I think it's our goal here to have hundreds of these templates for you guys to work from. Right now, I think there's like maybe 20 templates or so. There's going to be way, way, way more as we progress with the development of HypeHype. And of course, we also have some empty scenes here as well. There's the fully empty scene, but then there's also some empty scenes here that do have a little bit of gameplay added to them, which is nice to get you started. So, I guess let's just jump into a blank canvas here and we'll start talking about the basics of working in HypeHype. So now we're in the editor. I picked my template, which is in this case just a blank canvas, still considered a template. So really basic stuff. Move around, right? Take one finger, slide it around, and you can move around. You take two fingers and you pinch, and it zooms you out. Open them up, and it zooms you in. You can see there the nice action. Also with two fingers you can rotate, and the rotate is kind of based on objects. So if I wanted to rotate around a specific point, for example, I could select this box, and now I'm rotating around this box. Sorry, I'm going to be referring to some notes here. I have a really bad habit of going off on tangents or just completely skipping things that I meant to talk about you. So I'm going to try and make sure that I'm following my notes pretty closely here. All right, so that is the basic controls of HypeHype. We're going to get into actually working with objects a little bit, but first I want to cover the main kind of UI that we have going on here. So first, really important, in the upper left here, we have what we call the Hamburger Menu. I did not mean to exit. I'm bad at, like, my thumb hovers or my finger hovers and then it taps stuff I don't mean to tap. So this is the Hamburger Menu, these three lines. open that up, and you have a bunch of options in here. So as we saw, the very first one is exit, which exits the editor. So don't tap on that if you want to stay in the editor like I do, right? The next one, really important for while you're learning, is the help. Whoops. So you tap that. Is that? All right, that seems to be bugging. All right, well, you should be able to tap that help icon and go to the HypeHype Editor Wiki. There seems to be something wrong with it at the moment. But luckily for me, that HypeHype Editor Wiki is available from a bunch of different places. For example, if we select an object here, we can open up any one of these. No. All right, so something seems to be up with the wiki links at the moment. I'll have to check on this after the stream. But you should be able to open these up and go to the HypeHype Editor Wiki directly in app without leaving the editor. And you can look up different things about the editor. So the really important one here, which I wish I could show you, is this one here. It's going to take you to the main overview of the editor. It's going to give you all the big information that you need in order to start building hypes. Hey, Ryan, what's happening? But we'll continue since there seems to be something wrong with the wiki link at the moment. I'm sure we'll get that fixed pretty quickly. So next up, we have some editor options here. We have presets, which gives you a few different presets. I always like to work in the default 3D because it leaves everything open. If you select, for example, side scroller or the top down, it's going to start to limit certain... Whoa. Yeah, it's going to start to limit certain things. Like now, we're only moving here on the z-axis. We can't move up and down on the y-axis in this top-down view. And of course, it's expecting us to have a view kind of like this. And then same for side scroller. In the side scroller view, you can see there, it's being a little bit of a pain. But in this view, I can't move on the z-axis. I can only move on the y-axis and the x-axis like this. Of course, I can rotate some, but especially in the side scroller mode, even rotation is limited. You can see there I can only rotate so far to the left or the right, which is why I generally like to work in the default 3D. Sorry, Sophia, you're going to have to wait for the end of the stream for the new jam announcement. And Meek, I appreciate all your suggestions. Very good suggestions. Anyway, as we will continue here. So now we have snapping modes. Snapping modes is really cool. It gives you a few different options for snapping. So first is free movement. In free movement, we take our object, we can move it around anywhere we want, and it will just go. And in fact, I'm going to, before we demonstrate this some more, since we're demonstrating snapping, it'll be good if I have a second object, because snapping needs some objects. I'm going to ungroup these. I'm going to remove that. So the next in the snapping, we have snap to edges, and this is going to, just like it sounds, it's going to snap objects based on the edge of those. Since these two cubes are the same size, they snap together really nicely with snap to edges. One thing to note about snap to edges is it doesn't match rotation. So if you have an object rotated, you can see now it's still snapping to the edge, but the rotation remains different. Next snapping mode is snap to grid. So there is basically the game world exists on a grid, right? There's the x-axis, which is this way. There's the y-axis, which is this way. And then there's the z-axis is this way, right? And so when you're on snap to grid, the object is snapping to that grid of x, y, and z in one increment units. So for example, if we bring this up here, I'm going to bring up at the bottom, you can see now the X, Y, and Z coordinates. And as I move this, you can see it's perfectly snapping 1 unit every time I move it. Boom. So that's snap to grid. And then finally, we have physical collision. One thing about physical collision is that it will only work if your object is a dynamic object or unmovable object. Basically, it needs to have this physical node on it. If it doesn't have a physical node, then it can't be moved with the physical collision, because what the physical collision does is it lets you move the object around, but it won't let it move through other objects that also have physical collision. So like you can see there, as I drag it down, once it gets to the ground, it stops moving. It's not going to move through the ground. Whereas if I'm in free movement, then I can just move this thing wherever I want. Bloop, 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 inside the other box, underneath the ground. But with physical collision on, I can't go past the ground, and I also can't go through that other box. Really handy when you're working with dynamic objects, because you don't want those to be intersected with other objects. It can cause weird stuff to happen. Let's put this back on free movement for now. So that is the two kind of editor preset modes that you have there, the presets and the snappings. Snapping can also be accessed from another area, which we're going to look at here in just a few moments. But the next section we have here in the Hamburger menu, a really important one, is the hype settings. Well, more than just hype settings. We have all our hype parameters, and these are all parameters that are shared throughout the entire hype. So these parameters either affect the whole hype or are parameters that can be used by various tools within the hype. So first of all, whoops, it was there at the bottom. So settings, pretty basic. You can set the primary orientation. It's a good idea to try and create your games for portrait mode. Most people are going to use HypeHype in portrait mode when they're scrolling through looking for games. So it's nice if your game works into portrait mode. But if you want to make a game that does need landscape, you can set the landscape here as the primary orientation. And then underneath that, you can also select how it will affect the hype when it is rotated. So right now we have portrait as our primary orientation, but landscape behavior is going to say, what does the game do? How does the game handle it if you do play this game that's intended for portrait in landscape, right? And so you only have two options. It's here. It's either cut portrait or expand portrait. If you do cut portrait, which is what it's on by default, you can see here if we play and then we turn sideways, what the cut portrait does is more or less it tries to keep the proportions of everything that's on screen the same size. So it's going to crop some from the top. It might crop some from the sides as well. Obviously, since I don't have a landscape window here, it's getting cropped by my screen overlay. So you can't really see the difference that it's making. But you can also, for example, we can look at, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. We can turn on black bars here. You know, I'm working on a tablet right now. The black bars are going to show me what this is going to look like on a 16 or a 9:16 screen. And then there should be also assisted in-game, which show me some guides there, which it doesn't seem to be showing at the moment. And then we have tap to start, a very simple parameter. If you put this on, nothing will happen in your game until the player taps the screen for the first time, which can be handy depending on how you want your game to start. All right, next up in this list, we have environment. So in the environment, we have a number of options. I'm going to try and go through these pretty quickly here. So you have ground type here. You have 3 ground types. You can have empty, which of course is no ground. Oops. You can have infinite plane, which is infinite ground that stretches off into infinity in all directions. Just a flat plane. Or you can have height map, which we have to zoom out a little bit, I think, to see here. But the height map has hills. You can make hills and curves. The height map has limited range. It only goes so far. So you see here, if we scroll far enough, we can reach the end of the height map. And then in here, in the environment, there are a bunch of settings related to the height map. So the height map uses this histogram to determine where the hills are going to be. So you can edit these sizes. You can edit the scales here to change how many hills you have, how big the hills are. You can change the height, the size, all this good stuff. All right, I'm not going to go too much into that. That's starting to get pretty advanced, and in fact, we're going to go back to infinite plane before we continue. Where did I lost my stuff? I'm going to go here to reset my view so that we can see what we're doing here. We're going to go back into that environment. And then we have some color settings here for the ground. Oh, actually, before that, we have the world bottom. So the world bottom determines where the bottom of the world is. If you are in infinite plane mode, that is going to be, you can see there, the level where the ground is. If you are in empty mode, there's not going to be any visual representation of the bottom of the world. But it is, this next feature here, destroy out of bounds, is going to destroy objects if they go below the bottom of the world, basically. Can be really handy for optimization when you have a lot of dynamic objects, something like that. And then if you're in the height map, the bottom of the world, I think it doesn't really do anything in the height map mode. The height map settings are all in there in the height map. We just discussed destroy out of bounds. So the next thing here is colors. The ground materials only applies to the height map. So when you use the height map, you can select materials for your ground here. We're going to go a little bit more into visual and physical materials in just a moment. The easier thing here for the background is to just use these background colors. If you're using infinite plane, you're going to change the color of the ground in here. And of course, if it's empty, all the colors are going to be changed in here. You do have a few options for background styles here. You of course can have just one solid color. You can have a gradient, which is kind of what these are looking at right now. So we have a few presets here. By default, we're on this gray preset, which looks pretty flat. Actually is not flat. There is a little bit of gradient going on there. Which will change here, so we can see what this is doing. Because now at the bottom here, once we select a preset, we can then go and edit the colors on that preset. So we'll go in the colors here. We have 4 main colors to change. So as I mentioned, ground colors here, you can see I changed the ground color to red, and the ground color goes up there. We have the sky color. You know, let's change the nice blue sky color. We can't really see it there because of the way we're looking at it. But there, if we tilt the camera up a little bit more, we can see the blue sky. And then finally, we have our fog value here, or fog color. Let's just make it another color again, so it'll stick out. We'll make it kind of purple. And then that the fog color is also kind of determined based. You can go in here to the fog values, of course. You have fog start and fog end. I think the maximum here on end is 80, and of course the minimum is 0. And this is also the view distance that you have within your hype. Anything that is outside of the fog end range is going to be invisible. You're not going to be able to see it. Okay, so that's the basic of colors. There's a lot more you can do in there when you get down into the nitty gritty of things. But for now, for the sake of keeping things moving, we're going to move on from there. Our final setting we have in environment here is an overall gravity setting. We can change the The more negative it is, the harder the gravity is going to push down. The more positive is, it's actually going to push up. So it was about -9 there-ish was our default value for the gravity. You can also further adjust gravity in the physical materials, which we're going to get to almost next here. So the next two things here on the list are visual and physical materials. And essentially these are materials that can be used by any object within your hype. So I'm actually going to not jump into those quite yet from there. I'm going to go select an object, and we can see here that we have physical and visual, right? So if I open up the physical node, I then have physical material. I can click on that, and we have a few options here. These are the preset options. I can also make more with this plus sign. I can create a new material, and you can see here when I go into the create material, I have a bunch of options. So density is basically the weight of the object. Restitution is the bounciness of the object. Friction is how much it'll stick to things. So of course, like friction all the way down is basically going to just slide across anything. It's got no friction. Friction really high, it's really going to kind of stick to other objects. It's not going to want to move super easily. And then linear and angular dampening. Dampening essentially is a kind of a force that slows the movement of an object when it is in motion. So linear dampening will slow movement in all of these directions, movement in any direction, and then angular dampening is going to slow spinning rotational movement. Okay, wow. Really just rolling through information here. So those are the physical materials. We're going to leave that default for now. We'll see if we go to visual here, we just have a few options, but actually if we pop over to the basic tab, we're going to go a little bit more into this this tab, or this whatever this thing is up here, this menu, in just a moment. I probably should have put us back to the, this is what I'm talking about, tangents. I get lost going off on tangents. Anyway, you see here we have these 4 balls underneath the preview of our object. And these are the visual material slots. All objects have 4 visual material slots, but not all objects actually use all 4 visual material slots. And we can see on this cube, it's actually only using the first one. So like if we tap on that green, then we have all of our standard visual materials in here. These are basically the colors that can be applied to an object. So we can see we tap orange, then we get orange there. But if we tap red in the second one, nothing's going to happen because this particular object is only using that first material slot. So I'm going to get out of that menu for a second. We're going to go back in here and we're going to look at this. So this is the same menu we just got to through that other menu. That's another a handy thing about HypeHype is there's often multiple ways to do the same thing to make it more convenient for you based on whatever you're doing. So for example, if I'm editing an object and I want to change some colors, I can access it from here. If I want to go and I want to do editing on all the colors in my hypes at once, I can come access it from the Hamburger menu. Again, I can add new colors, and then I get to make a color. So again, we see here we have 4 color slots within the visual materials, and they kind of do different things to simulate real world lights. All right, so so your ambient color is kind of like the base color of the object, right? Let's go. What's going to stick out on this red background? Let's get us a nice kind of cyan, greenish blue color there, right? And you can see there actually it. Whoops! Oh, it's because I picked a new color. Duh. Anyway, you can see in the preview here of the color. So now we have the cyan. So diffuse. This is now simulating diffused light. So you can see here as we pull this around, it's kind of tinting that main color, right? So this diffused light is light that's that's bouncing off from other objects, whatever. It's not really doing that. It's just kind of simulating that effect. So you can change this to whatever you want. You know, like for something like this, I would probably, since we have a lot of purple and blue in the sky, I would set my diffuse color somewhere purple and blue. We can make it darker, we can make it lighter, and you can see it kind of changes the preview there. Generally, it's nice to have diffuse a little darker. Obviously, it depends on the situation. Specular is more or less the highlights. So you can see here, we crank up the specular and we get these kind of really bright highlights on the box. We bring it down and those highlights go away completely. And then again, we can change that color to anything we want. If we bring it over here to the higher saturation, we can see that those highlights now start to kind of have a color tint to them, depending on where we set this on the wheel. And then finally, there is the shadow color. Shadow color can be a little bit tricky to play with, so my recommendation would be to kind of like play around until you get a shadow that looks good to you in the preview. But I believe the way that it works is lighter colors in the shadow are going to actually give you darker shadows. Darker colors are going to give you lighter shadows, so it's kind of like an opposite thing there. All right, that is visual materials. We've kind of already looked at physical materials, so we can see here again, the same menu that we got to through the physical node. And again, we can create more materials. We already showed creating a material, so I'm not going to do that again. Next, we have texts. So there's a few different tools that can use texts. Mostly the text tool, and then we also have the text-to-speech tool. But the nice thing about this is you can have these kind of like preset strings of text, right? So you can have your preset text in here, and then when I go grab a text node, which of course we'll get into this a little bit more as we get into it, when I add text, I can just be like, I want to use that one, hello world, turn it on, and there's my text. Boom. You can have quite a few of those. I'm not sure what the limit is on the number of text strings you can have, but it's not small. Next up, we have UI colors. So another color one, but this is going to be used by UI elements. UI elements being, again, this text node is a UI element. You have buttons, joysticks. We also have a full custom UI tool that are all going to use these UI colors. And the main difference between these UI colors and the visual materials is that these are just one basic color, right? So if I hit plus here, it's going to give me my color picker. I can pick a color, and that's it. That's my new color. You don't get any of the specular, diffuse, shadows. It's just flat colors in the UI color. And then again, if I go to a node that uses it, here we can see the color on the text node, and then I can apply that new color that I just made. And then the same as with the visual materials, the physical materials, if I go in here and I select this, and I don't like any of these colors I have already, I can go ahead and make a new one right here, and then apply it to my text. All right, and finally, we have effects. So effects are what we call particle effects. You can basically make all kinds of custom effects using this particle system, which is really nice. So we have a few basic ones in here, like here's the dust. We have this confetti blast. We have a basic explosion there. Basic smoke puff. But then again, of course, you can make your own custom effects. I'm not going to go into this one because this gets really deep. There's a ton of settings in here. If you do want to make your own custom effects, I definitely recommend playing around with this tool and checking out the particle effects wiki. Let's see if that is not accessible either at the moment. There should be a question mark there. Or is it? No, it's not here. All right. Anyway, there's a nice section on the wiki about editing particle effects, because there's a ton of stuff you can do. You can make so many different things with the particle system. It's actually a lot of fun. I love making my own effects for my games. Ryan PH, I am not going to do a detailed description of every node. That would take quite a long time. But if there, I'll probably kind of cover a few basic nodes and the overall idea of working with nodes. If there is a specific node that you want to hear about, hopefully at the end of this, we'll have time to take a few questions. I'm going to try and get through what I have prepared here as quickly as possible. But this is quite a bit of information, so let's see how long it takes. But that's particle effects. I'm not going to go in any more to particle effects at the moment. And then the last thing we have here in the camera, or in the Hamburger menu, are some camera settings. So basically, I did it once already. I hit this reset camera, and that resets the editor camera to the position of the game camera. So you see where the camera is right now. If I hit play, that's what I'm looking at. Another nice thing you can do, if you move this around and you say, like, I would rather look at this a little more head on, I want to see this object from this position, I can go in here and I can hit set camera, and now this camera position is my game camera position. Again, if I hit play, boom, there we go, looking at the same scene from the same angle. And then finally here we have thumbnail. You always want your hype to have a nice thumbnail. You know, never just do what I did and just hit a thumbnail when you don't have anything built. Like, when your hype is done, find a nice screen, take a thumbnail. You want the thumbnail to look nice so that people want to play your game. And if we really want to, just kind of as an example, I can hop out of the editor here real quick. I can go to my profile, and you can see here, these are all the thumbnails that I've taken for my games. You know, I put some text into there sometimes, try and get a nice angle. A lot of these ones here where you see the big characters, like this one, this one, this one, those are all custom. You know, so I set up that scene specifically for the thumbnail, and then I basically throw it away because it's only good for the thumbnail. But it's nice to have a nice thumbnail to make your game look more enticing for people to want to play. Let's go back into here. Let's load that autosave. It does have a nice autosave feature here, so that if you do accidentally close the app crashes for whatever reason, you do not save. When you come back into editing that same hype, it's going to ask you if you want to pick up where you left off. Of course, it's not foolproof, so it's always a good idea to save your work. But the autosave is there, and it has saved my rear end quite a few times. So very nice to have that. Anyway, so that's the 3 camera settings that you have in there. Next up, we're going to go to the quick menu. I have the quick menu. It's down here on the right, but actually by default, I believe you're going to find it on the left here. And as you just saw, the quick menu is editable. So you can hit edit here, and you can see up here we have some more options that we can add to this menu if we want, like the 3 camera options that we just had. And this is really nice because this is always accessible. So when it's in this collapsed mode, these 5 options that I see right here, I can just click those. There's the snapping modes, which we looked at earlier. This is super handy to just be able to quickly change these snapping modes. Something I do all the time, that when I'm building, switching between these snapping modes. And in the quick menu, for example, I pick up this box and I'm like, oh, I just picked up that box and I moved it and I was in free mode. I didn't really want to do that. I wanted it to snap. So without even letting go, I can hit snap to edges, and then I can bring that, and boom, I'm snapping to the edges. Area pick, another nice one. You can go hit this, drag a selection, and now everything within that selection is selected. Logic on and off, this is going to be really important. We don't have any, or at least not much logic in this hype right now, But you can see here we do have a few logic nodes. There's the text node I put in there earlier. This node up here, the sunlight node, represents the light source for the hype. This is the camera node. And then up here, there's a game end system, which is just in this template. And if we turn this logic off, then that hides all that stuff. We still see this one because it's a 3D. If we turn off the 3D, it's going to hide that as well. So this is really useful because a lot of the times when you get into more complex games, you might end up with a lot of these little nodes floating around. And when you start to get into, you want to start doing some decorating, some level design on your hype, having all these nodes in the way sometimes can be a problem. So it's really nice. You can just quickly turn them off and just focus on your objects, your scene, placing stuff where you want it to be. There's the help here. This is the editor chat. You can come in here. You can ask questions from other people using the app. Obviously it depends on when you're asking and who's around, but you might be able to get some help from the editor there. Undo, I think undo is pretty self-explanatory. We can do some undo here. You can see undo. And then if we slide this out, we can access the rest of these. So again, we can reset the camera. We can take the thumbnail. We can set the camera. We have a redo up here. And then this copy is really nice. If we say we have multiple objects selected and say this was a more complicated thing than just 2 boxes, and we wanted to take this and use it in another hype, we could select these. We could hit copy. You see that copy now turns into a paste. And now if I was to go and load up a new hype, let's just load up this one, for example. Then I can open this up and you can see that paste is still a paste. I can hit that paste and there's my 2 boxes now in this new hype. Really handy for copying things between hypes. That's what it's there for. Let's go back to where we were. Let's load that autosave. All right. So that's the basics of the quick menu. Again, you can pop this open, you can hit that edit, and then you can edit the quick menu. You can make it shorter, you can make it taller, and you can switch which side of the screen it appears on. I like to keep it on the right side here personally. I find it a little bit easier to tap, but it will sometimes move depending on what menus are open. For example, if we were to open up an object that had a lot of nodes on it and that menu came down, it would push this quick menu to the other side. All right. Next up, we have the bottom here in the bottom left, we have assets and logic. So with the assets, this is the asset library. You have tons of visual assets in here that you can use. There's music in here that you can use. There's sound in here that you can use. And then one thing that's going to be really helpful to you if you're new to HypeHype, you don't really know how to do all this logic stuff yet, are add-ons and pre-mades. Because these are things that come with logic already applied to them. For example, we have this kind of new one here, the simple player with follow touch. So we can put this guy in our hype, and he's already got a little bit of a logic applied to him. So like if we, boom, I'm going to zoom out here, just get a little bit of a wider view so we can play with this guy a little bit. I'm going to, boom, set my camera view. And now when we play, we have this guy with this tap and follow logic. So anywhere I tap on the screen, he's gonna go, right? Nice and handy. Some gameplay logic already created for you. And of course, there's quite a few things in here, but just like templates, this is something that we're trying to add more stuff to all the time, to give you more and more elements that you can use to create different types of games. Right now in here, we have some various types of different things, some cars, a speed boost for cars, some animals that have player controls and animations on them, a simple NPC that will follow the main character, stuff like that. uh, fire effect that has hazard element to it so that you get hurt if you touch it. Great stuff. All kinds of stuff you can do to make different types of games in the pre-mades. And then the add-ons are similar to pre-mades, but the add-ons are just the logic that you can then take and apply to objects in your world. So for example, I'm going to try not to take a super old one because the super old ones might not work great. Let's do this drag and hover add-on. So if I grab this add-on, we can't see it right now because the logic view is off, so I want to turn the logic view back on. And we have this nice little box here, right? And so now I can take this box and I can apply it to an object in my hype. So I've now put this drag and hover logic onto this orange cube. If we hit play, I can now drag and hover this orange cube. That logic was made for me and added using an add-on. Very handy stuff. Faux Live says, how can I download this app? If you live in the Philippines or Finland, you can download it simply by going to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store and searching for HypeHype. If you do not live in one of those two wonderful countries, you can still get access to HypeHype by going to HypeHype.com and filling out the application to join our early access program. HypeHype is in early access at the moment. So, HypeHype.com, find the Get Access section, fill out the application, and you will usually be accepted within 1 to 2 days to the Early Access program. Pretty much everybody gets in. Pretty much the only reason people don't get in is because they either give a bad email or there's a typo in the email. So just make sure the email is correct and you'll get in. All right, where was I? Okay, so we did assets, logic. Now you can see here that we've added a few things. There's a new option here. Well, first, we haven't looked at logic yet. I'm not going to go too much into logic yet, but logic is how you make stuff happen. And there's tons of logic nodes in here that do all kinds of different stuff. They're broken up into categories. I will go into this a little bit more shortly. But this is where you get basically anything you want to make things happen within your hype. So triggers are all things that will trigger things based on different inputs. We have buttons, we have joysticks, we have object touch, which we kind of just demonstrated. We have collision trigger, which detects collision between two objects. Gestures like swipes, touch determines screen touches. Orientation, motion, those have to do with the actual physical device that you're using, stuff like that. Logic is all math stuff. It can be very simple. Some of it can be very complicated. But math is how things work in games. Like basically, when you get down to it, games don't exist without math. So this is a very important section when you want to start building your own custom stuff. Actions, of course, all kinds of different actions, explosive forces, destroyers, spawners, look at, raycast. These are all kind of, some of them a little more advanced tools, but super handy stuff when you're making your games. The joints will connect two objects together, so you can have hinges, wheels, springs. You can glue two objects together. Not glue, but you can connect two objects together with one of these joints, and they'll have whatever properties you give it through the joint properties. And then actually one thing that I should note here is you might see different stuff in this menu depending on how you access it. So right now I accessed it from this logic menu. So these are all things that that basically are all-purpose nodes. There's some nodes that can only be used for certain things. For example, if we go into this player character and we hit this plus here, which is how we add more logic nodes to the player character, you can see we have more here. We have the physical node, which can only be applied to object. You need an object to use the physical node. What else do we have in here? In the visual, you see we have a few more here. We have some animation nodes that, again, the rigged animation can only work with the objects that have the rigs for animations. So a rig is kind of like, we have this guy here, right? But then within this guy, he has bones that determine how he moves, how his legs are going to move, how his arms are going to move, and so on. And so rigged animations can only be applied to characters that have those bones and can use those animations. Anyway, I digress. Like I said, I'm trying not to get too much into this. But again, we have tons of stuff here in meta, of a lot of stuff. Good stuff for polishing games. Vectors starts to get into kind of more advanced math stuff. But the basic vector stuff is going to come in really handy when you start getting into doing your own custom movements and stuff like that. Audio here, we've got a bunch of audio tools, and then some color tools that you can use to recolor certain things. And again, this is kind of what Ryan was asking about a little while ago, like, am I going to explain all the nodes? You can see here why I'm not going to try and go through and explain all of these nodes, because there's quite a few of them, and some of them get pretty complex. A lot of them are quite easy to use once you understand the basics of how editing in HypeHype works. But I would say if you're new to HypeHype, don't try and just jump right into this node stuff, and try and do some kind of simple stuff and slowly work your way up to the more complicated stuff to make sure you kind of understand how things work. Because really, once you understand how to work with these tools, you can really do almost anything in here. Boop-a-doo. So that was nodes. And then finally, at the bottom here, you saw once I added this player character who has a couple of things attached to him, I also brought in this drag and hover. I got this reusables menu that came up, and that we actually, none of these are considered reusables because they don't have a base object in them. But if we had a simple, let's get ourselves a simple pre-made, for example, not add-on, we want to go pre-mades. For example, let's go all the way to the bottom here, this bomb. All right, so we've now added an explosive to our hype. If we play it here, we can see the guy hits the explosive and it goes off, right? And now if we want to add more of those, I can add them from this explosive container, but I can also just go right down to the reusables here. We can see explosives. I can just grab that and boom, drag a new version of that explosive into the hype. Really quickly, easily. Close that, play, and now I have 3 of these bombs that blow up instead of just one. All right. So, like I said, sometimes when you get into more complicated builds, you're going to end up with a ton of these little nodes all over the place. You got text nodes. Right now we have text node here. Like if I open up one of these, player control, for example, I can hit show down here to show the contents of what's in that player control. And in fact, we see that there's quite a few nodes in there. There's also going to be quite a few nodes, or at least some nodes in... Oh, there. They were under the ground there. So in our move pointer there, we have some nodes. Our drag and hover, we have some nodes. We have some loose nodes. And now say I want to find a specific node, and I don't want to just kind of go searching through and looking for the node that I need. I can go up here, whoops, to the node search, expand that menu, and now it's showing me every node in my hype. I can just browse through here, and when I find the one that I'm looking for, I can tap on it, and it's going to take me to that node. And then if I'm looking for something specific, let's say, for example, I want to find the music player. I can hit music and I can see, oh, I don't have a music player in this hype yet. Cool. Now I know I can add one. Say I want to find the camera. I can hit camera, boom, and there we go, camera, and then it shows me where the camera is. Super handy once you start having really complex logic going on. You know, you might end up with hundreds of these nodes. So being able to go in there and quickly find the node that you're looking for is super handy. Nice. Glad I could give some tips to the more seasoned pros, HypeC. All right. So that was node search. Finally here in the main UI, going to collapse that node search. In the bottom right here, we have play and save. I've hit play a number of times here already. That's just going to play test your hype. You hit play, you get to play the hype. You get to see how it's working. And then finally, you hit save, of course. You're going to go and you can now save the hype. You can see there it forced a thumbnail because I hadn't taken a thumbnail quite yet. So again, so like the first time you save, if you haven't taken a thumbnail, it's going to take one for you, which is fine. It's good. But make sure before you publish, make sure you give yourself a nice thumbnail. But anyway, on this screen, we can give the hype a title. We can give it a description. We can go in here, edit categories. You know, selecting the appropriate categories for your hype is really important. It's going to help people that are interested in that type of games find your game. So you want to make sure you're using accurate categories on your hypes. You can also, we don't have any leaderboard components yet in this hype, but if we did on this screen, we would be able to set up how our leaderboards are going to work. We can, of course, say listed or unlisted. Unlisted hypes are not visible on your profile. And then shortly here, we'll talk about playlists. This is really handy for playlists. So if you want to have a game, say, that has like 10 levels in it, and all those levels are going to be in a playlist, but you don't want to have each individual level on your profile page, then you can save all those levels unlisted, throw them in a playlist, and the playlist will be on your profile page. And then people can find all of those 10 levels collected together, which is nice. And you can also disable comments here if you want to. I'm just going to save as draft for now so that we can go. What's going on here with my pad today? Anyway, let's just pretend that I saved. So now we do still have one main thing to cover here as far as editor UI goes, and that is the object widget. So we select an object. We've done this a number of times already, and we get this little widget. You can see it has 3 arrows on it, and then a bunch of these little buttons that are kind of around it. And then also when we select an object, we get this details panel in the upper right-hand corner. So I'm going to start with the object widget. All right. So basically, this has your basic options for manipulating this object. So obviously, we can move around. You can see I'm just grabbing this crosshair at the bottom, and I can move that around. Now, if I wanted to, I could grab by any of these individual handles, and now I'm only moving on that one axis. So blue is the z-axis, red is the x-axis, green is the y-axis. So that's really handy if you want to do kind of more precise movements. And then this will change. So the next one here is rotate. So again, I can just grab that rotate icon at the bottom and I can start rotating, but it's going to rotate on all axes at once. Particularly with rotate, it can be really difficult to get what you want just by using this. You're going to want to use these individual handles to rotate on an individual axis to get the rotation that you're looking for, most likely. And then finally, we have scale. Scale's represented by boxes. And again, I can use the main icon here, and I can scale the object uniformly on all axes at once, or I can grab these handles and I can scale on an individual axes. Get this guy back to his default. And then I showed this once before, but at the bottom here, we also have this advanced menu where We can see all of these values changing as we scale, but I could also go in here and I could manually set this. Like, I want this to be 2 wide, 1 tall, 2 deep, and there we go. I was able to more precisely set the scale. I can do the same thing with position. I can also just grab these values and drag. You can see here I'm grabbing and dragging, or I can tap the value and I can manually set what I want it to be. Yeah, undo button is definitely your friend when you mess up the rotation. Hey, Bradders, what's happening, my man? Good to see you, dude. And I actually do that a lot. Sometimes I'll go to grab, you know, like in this case, I want to move on the Z-axis. I'll go to grab that blue icon, and I'll just be a little bit off, and I'll like, oh no, I just rotated my object all crazy. Boom, undo, good to go. Okay, so we have move, rotate, scale. What are these other two? So the one here with the little glue icon with the drop coming out of it, this is glue. So you can glue 2 objects together. I can glue this orange cube to the green cube, and now the green cube is considered the parent of the orange cube. As I move around that green cube, the orange cube is going to move with it. These are dynamic objects, so that if I play now, they're going to move around as one object. You can see there they kind of fall and bounce as one object instead of 2 separate objects. So that's the glue icon. I can also tap on that, and I can see if there's anything glued to it, or if it is glued to anything, and I can say detach all, and now they're not glued anymore. I can go and I can move this orange one freely, and same thing with the green. And then finally, this one with the link is one of the many ways that you can make logic links between objects. Like I mentioned previously, a lot of features, there's multiple ways that you can do stuff. In this case, this thing doesn't have any signals to send. So I can't really, like, if I'm going to do that, it's just going to be like, you can't create a link because you don't have anything to send. But if I was to say add an interval to this one, and then say add a, let's just do like a destroyer to this one, then I can pull that link, and it's going to say, hey, you have interval on time, and then we want to set that destroyer, execute, boom. The interval is set to 1 second, so now we're going to play, and after 1 second, that green box is going to go away. Yeah, I mean, the short answer is you don't need to download HypeHype to use it on Windows. You just need to load it up in a browser. So there is that. Yeah, already an hour in. That's what I'm talking about, Ryan. I knew I was going to be covering a lot of stuff here, but this is definitely, time is flying by here as I am explaining the nitty-gritties of using the editor. Okay, so that was the object widget. Now let's look a little bit at the object details panel, which is this thing that opens up in the upper right-hand corner here. So we start with the basic. In the basics tab, we have a preview of the object. Really nice thing you can do here is you can tap that preview, and then you can replace that object with any object in the game. So I'm going to change that plain cube into this kind of wood looking cube, and you can see there it replaced it, and it even kept my scale settings. So you can see here I was 212. It's still scaled the way the previous object was scaled. It does reset the colors, so we do have the colors now of the new object, but we can change those if we want to whatever we want to. And then also in here, we've already looked at, we have the visual materials. You can see this object has 2 visual materials, as we saw there when I just changed. You have our physics type here, the basic physics type. You have no physics, unmovable object, or dynamic object. So no physics means the object is just visual. You can see it, but you're not going to be able to interact with it in any way. If a dynamic object goes to that object, it's going to pass right through it. All that kind of stuff is not going to be detected by collision triggers, anything like that. If it has no physics, it's just a visual. If you put unmovable object, now it's got a physical body. Things can bump into it. It can be detected by collision triggers, raycasts, all that good stuff. But it's not going to move, no matter what. It's not going to move. Well, you could manually move it with transform nodes, vector transform, or the basic transform. But even in that case, you would want to change the physics settings a little bit, most likely. And then finally, you have dynamic object, which is what this has been up until this point. Dynamic object means it has a physical body, and then it also can move. So if we play here, you know, it drops down to the ground there, and then it stops. And then finally, we see here, earlier I took that drag and hover and applied it to this. We can see any add-ons or reusable containers that have been applied to this object. And then if they have any editable parameters, you can tap on them and open them up and edit that parameter. We can see right here our hover amount is 50. Maybe I want to make that a little bit lower. And there you see now that it doesn't lift up nearly as high when I grab it. So that's also really handy, especially with things that have more complex systems on them. Like this guy, player control, we have movement speed, turn speed. This is a broken link, but it's the camera follow, I think, which on this guy is off on default. Okay, and now in the advanced menu, this is the last menu we're going to spend a whole bunch of time looking at. In the advanced panel is basically any nodes that have been applied to that object. So we've talked about nodes here that are things that do things, and we've talked about a little bit how you can apply nodes directly to an object. So at the bottom here we see this little plus. We can add that, and then we can add new nodes to this object, say a collision trigger, you know, whatever we're going to add in there, a destroyer, a particle effect, anything like that, right? And then we have these, I believe there's a limit, I want to say 9. I'm not sure exactly, but there's a limit to how many nodes you can apply to a single object. And personally, I used to like to try and throw as many nodes as I can inside an object to try and keep things clean. But I found that it's, for me personally, it's much easier to go in and edit logic when I can look at it like this. I like this view where I can look at my nodes. I can follow these connection lines to see what they're doing. So these days, I really try not to place stuff inside objects too much, but there's certain things that they just work better if they're placed directly in an object. Collision trigger being one of them. Destroyer, pretty handy thing to just place inside an object. Particle effect as well, although destroyer and particle effect also easily work as separate nodes targeted to that object. Sorry, I'm gonna get a little more comfortable here. And so that is the basics of the advanced. You can tap on these and you get all the parameters that go along with that node that you can edit. And then, like I mentioned, when you open up any of these nodes, you get this little question mark, which should open the editor wiki, but there seems to be some sort of issue with accessing the wiki right now. So I'm going to have to see what's up with that. But another really handy thing, because in this case, you know, like I open up the destroyer here. If I click this, it's going to take me directly to the wiki page for the destroyer, so I can learn specifically about that tool instead of, you know, trying to like search through the wiki to find what I'm looking for. Really handy. And again, opens up directly in the app. You don't have to leave the app. It's going to bring up a pop-up window with the wiki. You can read what you need to read. You can close it and continue editing right there seamlessly. All right. Whoops, not ready to leave yet. All right, so we have covered the details panel, the object widget, all of these various menus. Advanced transform, we looked at transform types. Oh, we haven't looked at transform types. Let's look at that real quick. So in here, in the advanced transform menu, we have on the left-hand side here, this thing that says global. We can change that. It could also be local, or it could be camera. And essentially this determines how an object will be manipulated. So when we have it on global, which I would generally recommend using on global, this is going to move based on global coordinates. Let's turn the snapping off for a moment. You know, so we move on the X here, it's moving. You can see at the bottom there, it's moving just on the X. If we move the Z, it's moving just on the Z. But say we rotate this a little bit. Now, if we put this on local, now when we move, it's moving based on the rotation of the object. So it's moving on the object's y-axis, which has been rotated. So it's kind of moving at an angle there. Same with the X, moving at an angle. At the Z, moving at an angle. And you can see at the bottom, all those values are changing. You also have a nice one on the right side here. You can just reset all of those values back to their defaults. And then, so that was global, local, and then camera is based on the rotation of the camera. So you can actually see as I rotate the camera, the handles on the widget are rotating with me. So when you're in camera, the red is always going to be left to right no matter what angle you're looking at. The blue is always going to be towards to back, and the Y is always going to be up and down based on the camera's point of view. Personally, I rarely use camera, but I often switch between global and local because those can be really handy. By default, I usually keep it on global. All right, going back to the notes, we looked at asset replace. Super handy, that asset replace. Great for remixing. I'm just gonna, because it's so handy, I'm gonna exit out of here and I'm just gonna show kind of how quickly and easily we can make something using the asset replace. So let's say we go into this template here. This is a platforming template, all right? So we can play. We got this guy. He can run. He can jump on these guys. We can see up in the sky here, we have a bunch of elements. So if we want to change this into a different theme, it's like super easy. We tap on this guy, and now we can pick a new player character. Technically, we can pick any character we want. One thing to keep in mind when you're asset replacing characters that have logic applied to them is that the size of the character matters. These characters are different sizes. So if you this guy right here, this is the tiny guy. This is one of the smallest characters that we have. So you're going to want to replace it with other small characters. You know, like we have the koala here. He's another small character. He's going to fit this model. But essentially, there might be logic within that guy that is dependent on his size and how far away he's going to be from certain things because of his size. And those things might not work properly if you put a character that's too big. For example, this guy right here, you can jump on him and you can kill him, but if he hits you and you hit him any direction except for from above, he's going to damage you. But for example, if we take this guy and we put a big player model on him, like this Yeti is a large player model, you can see here it's about twice the size of that guy. Now when we play, I'm not going to be able to, when I jump on his head, I'm still going to get hurt because the thing that detects where I am in relation to him is still set for a small character. So either I would need to go into the logic for this guy, which we do have here. If we turn the logic on, I can go into the enemy logic here, and I could start to adjust these values to try and get it to work with a large character. But the easier option is, of course, to just pick one of the small characters. You know, we have this owl here. He's one of the small characters. Switch to the owl, and now the jump on head is going to work. Boom. There we go. And now we can do this for all of these, right? So we can take our hazard. We can change that into something else. Just for grins, I'll change it into a lightning strike here. Boom. This spring thing, that's a little more complicated. I won't change that right away, but it's also pretty simple to change. It just has 2 pieces to it. This is our collectible. I could go find some other thing to be the collectible. Like maybe I want it to be, I don't know why I searched for space there. Maybe I want this collectible to be a coin instead of a gem. I can search coin, and then we got a bunch of different types of coins here. Simple coin. Boom. Now my collectible is a coin. It's a little big. Maybe I want to shrink that down a little bit. And then same semi-solid platform. This is just the semi-solid platform in this template is a platform that you can jump through from the bottom, but you land on it if you come from the top. Just as an example, I can, whoops, I put a couple of these here. You can see I can jump through from the bottom, but then I can stand on them from the top. And again, I can change those. And if I change the object here, it's going to change for every copy of that object. So like, I'm just going to change this into a basic cube just for time's sake. Let's say rounded cube. Changed it, boom, and there you can see every copy of it has changed into that cube. If I change the color here, every copy of it is going to change color. Super quick and easy way to kind of customize a template to then make it your own kind of game. So now I've changed these templates, or I've changed these, I've asset replaced these elements to make them a little different. You know, I could go in here, I could change the colors of this. Like we showed earlier, I can go in, I can change the background color. And boom, I'm starting to have a game that looks completely different from the template, but is still using all those template elements. So I didn't need to build my own platforming logic from scratch. I got to use the platforming logic and all of the different elements that it has in here for me. But I still got to make them look like how I want them to look. Boom. Okay. All right, so the next thing on my list, a little more of a complicated thing, but something we've looked at a ton here already, and we have a ton of them since we're in this template, is all these little containers you see here. You have containers up here that look flat, and then we have these containers that kind of like look a little more 3D and rotate. And the main difference is, so these ones that are flat, these are a basic container, and these can only contain nodes. The main purpose of these is just to kind of keep things organized. You can, of course, name them so you kind of know what's inside, and then you can collapse them, right? So I can hide this, and now what I had like 8 nodes in there, I hide it, and now those 8 nodes are just one node. And of course, like we showed with the player controls, there could be a lot more than 8 nodes in there. The player controls, though, is a basically add-on or reusable. I believe it's set to add-on, yes. The main difference being add-ons are intended to be applied to 2 objects. You know, so this player control add-on has been applied to our player character to give it the player controls. Whereas these ones, which are reusables, if we open up this, we can see that's a reusable source at the bottom there. The reusables are made to make things that you're going to repeat, you know, like these platforms, like our collectible. You can either copy them from the container, which is create new reusable, And then you can see here we got a new one, new instance of that that we can place in our hype. Or you can take one that already exists in the game world and you can just copy it, and it's still gonna retain all the logic that's been applied to it. And then, like we showed earlier, if we replace the main one here, you know, even I scaled down the wrong one, which is why that didn't scale. Like I scaled that down. Well, these ones aren't going to scale because you can scale them individually, but any new one that I create from here is gonna be that same scale. But if I change, for example, this player model or this model, it's going to change for all of these. Boom. So, all right. So that was contained. That was a really brief look. I would like to go into more of these, but they get really complicated pretty quickly. But these are super handy. These are kind of like, once you get into more complicated stuff using this, you're going to be using these all the time. So you definitely want to feel okay using the containers, particularly the pre-made or the reusable and the add-on containers are super handy. Both for keeping things organized, keeping things simplified, and easily making games faster. Which is what we're all about, making game making as easy and as fast as we can. All right. But I'm not going to go into too much more there because we do have more stuff to cover here. And the next thing on my list here is selecting multiple objects. Okay. So there are multiple ways to select multiple objects. Obviously, earlier we saw the area pick, which is here in the quick menu. We can grab that. We can drag a selection area, and everything within that area is going to be selected. Another way, if you want to be a little more specific about what you're taking, you know, say I want to take these two cubes on the end, but I don't want to take this one in the middle. I can tap one, and then with one finger held down, I can tap the other one, and now I've selected just those two. And of course I can select more. I can select all three. I can select my character there. I can select the enemy, you know, whatever. And then I think, whoops, we can even start to unselect from there. Just keep that one finger held down and just tap on the objects you either want to select or unselect. And then once you have them, you can move them all at once. And then finally, another really handy thing to select multiple objects at once. We can select one object, and then here in the Actions menu, we can say Select Similar Objects. And then we get this nice little pop-up here that kind of shows us what we're selecting, right? So we have a few different filters we can select here. By default, it's the same visual is on, but we could say same color. And of course, these are all red, so it's still selecting the same three boxes. And it tells me how many objects are selected here at the bottom. So I have 3 selected. Same size. Again, these are all identical. So kind of like pretty much no matter what I select here, it's going to select these same 3 boxes. But say, let's just say, for example, let's select those, get out of here. Let's say I have just a normal cube. Right, so now I got a blue cube here. We'll get a couple of those. Now we go to the rounded cube. We hit Select Similar Objects. And we have the same color selected. If I unselect the same color, why it should be selecting those blue boys? Why you don't select the blue boys for me? It might be because these have add-on on them. The action menu, when you have an object selected, the actions menu is down here with the other object stuff. So you have duplicate, delete, and actions at the bottom. Duplicate, of course, just copies. Delete, of course, just deletes. And then actions has a few options in here. You do have access to this copy option. So I could copy this and now I could go paste it into a different hype. We have focus on selection. So if I focus on it, of course, it's going to take the camera and it's going to focus in on that object. Then we have the select similar. And then we actually have here another new really handy one is this make reusable. So if I select this make reusable, it's going to boom. It's going to put that, you see now here we have the container up here. So we now have a blue cube reusable container. And if I open that up, we're going to see it has my blue cube inside. I could start applying some logic to it, whatever. Nice, really handy feature there. That's a new one. I'm not sure, last update before, relatively new feature there. Okay, so that was multi-select. We've covered saving. We covered auto-save. We've looked at nodes. We've looked at node links. I guess one thing we could look at a little bit more with nodes, I mentioned, we talked about connecting them this way, but if we go up in here in the advanced and we have some stuff, we could also select from here. So and now I have all of my individual inputs, outputs, parameters for this particular tool. So I could say this on time, this interval is basically a timer. You know, I could say on time, I want to, wait, why? This is a reusable? Oh, that's right. This was, I forgot what that even was. But yeah, we can start to make logic links directly this way. This is actually the way I personally prefer to make links. I like to be able to see all these inputs and outputs and drag from the one that I want to use. And then you drag it to the new object and then you select what you want it to affect, which is what I just did there. With the links, so you can see here again, let's open this up. Links are always represented by lines. Lines could be 3 colors. If we have a red link here, that means it's an executing link, which means that it's going to activate whatever tool it's being sent to. So even like right now, I just sent this as an execute function, but I could send this, for example, I could say we want to change the duration of this interval to 5 seconds. Whoops. Well, you could see it at the bottom there, but and now we have this also execute. So I'm sending that 5 to the duration, but maybe I don't want to actually execute the interval when I send that 5. Then I can turn off that also execute. And the line becomes gray. A gray line is a line that just sends data. It's not making any action happen. It's just sending information between 2 nodes. And if it's going to execute, it's going to be red. And then finally, there's green. So if we say have a particle effect, we could target that to a specific object. So now we've targeted it to that other blue cube. So even though the particle effect is in this blue cube on the left, it's going to activate on this blue cube in the right, because that has been set as the target for that particle effect. And targeting links are green. That was the point of that, basically. Now this gets into a little more complicated stuff, but I can just really quickly, I can show here, let's say value inspector, output value, yes. The source is going to be this guy, yes, and let's just say position X because we know that's going to change. And this is always on. So now if I want to see what this value inspector that I just threw here is doing, then I can select it and then I can hit play, and up in the corner here we have this debug menu. And so now as I play, it's going to tell me the values that thing is setting out, and I can actually even change them during gameplay here. So if I start playing, we can see here as this character is moving, his X value is of course going down, and then I destroyed him. Of course, he disappeared. His value is no longer changing. So that's what we call the debug overlay, and that's really handy when you start getting into creating custom logic and something is not working right. You need to figure out where the problem is. It's really handy to be able to see these values changing in real time as you play through your hype. Okay. And then we got glue, details panel. We looked at that. Details, particle effects. Well, here's two things we kind of didn't look at too much. We kind of glossed over them. So a couple of times we saw we have this light source. So the light source is a flat kind of directional light source. It's coming from a certain direction. You can see here it's casting shadows. And it's based on the rotation of this light node. So you can see here, as I rotate this, it's going to change how my shadows are being cast and how the light is hitting these different objects. And then, of course, if I want, I can reset that. Now I have light that's coming straight down. Turn it a little bit. Boom, boom, boom. Great. And then finally, we looked a little bit at the color picker, but there was one thing I didn't show, which is super handy. If you want to match colors, anytime you're in anything where you're picking colors, where you bring up this color selection wheel, right? So the way this works is you have the inside of the wheel here, you're basically setting the lightness and the saturation. So like this way is really saturated, this way is really unsaturated. Up top, really bright, down low, black, right? And then along the side here, you're changing the hue. So you have all the different colors of the rainbow that you could possibly select here. And so you select where you want. You know, we want to go green. We want to get a brighter green. And we go over here, la-di-da. But if you want to match a specific color, and you know the hex code, which is if you're familiar with kind of like colors and the web and stuff like that, colors will have a hex code, which is a string of 6 letters and numbers that represent that color. So if you know the hex code for the green that you want to use, like say I happen to know that I want to use a green that is 66FF00, I can manually type that in, and then boom, there we go. I have my awesome HypeHype green. And then another cool thing about this, in the lower right hand or the lower left here, so the bigger cube, that's the one that I just tapped on. That brings up this menu. And then if you actually tap on the hex code, that's how you can change it. What was it again? It was 66FF00. But also in the smaller cube represents the last color you had selected. So if I go down the specular here now, and I know I want to use that same green again here, I can see it's in the small cube. I just tap on that, and then boom, I've now applied that same green to that color slot. And that'll actually work between different menus. So if we go all the way out of here, we go to UI colors. I want that green now in my UI as well. Boom, really simple right there. So those are some handy things about working with the colors. And I guess that is the official end of the beginner's guide to HypeHype that I had prepared for this stream. I know it was a lot. I know I went through it pretty quickly. So now we have a little bit of time. If there are questions, if you have any questions about working with the HypeHype editor, please do ask. If they are too complicated and I cannot answer them on the stream, I'll do my best to answer them after the stream. Of course, you can always go to the Discord. It's a great place to go to ask questions about using the editor. There are many, many knowledgeable folks on the Discord who are happy to help out. But I'm going to give my voice a rest for a moment and see if you guys have any questions. I'm going to take a swig from my beverage. All right, can you show example of wave generator and force compared to the vector transform? Okay, yes, we can definitely do that. I'm going to exit out of here. Don't need to save that. I'll just go back to the blank template. I don't need the autosave there. All right, so we're going to add a few nodes here. We're going to get a transform, right? This is the basic transform. Nope, not asset, logic. We're going to get a wave generator, which wave generator is in our math tools there. And then we're going to get a vector transform. So the primary difference between vector transform and the basic transform is that the vector transform can transform on all three axes at the same time. We have X, Y, Z, movement, rotation, scale, whatever. Vector transform can do that on all three of the axes as once, whereas the basic transform, it still does transform, rotate, scale, but it's only going to do it on one axis. Although I think scale, I'm not sure if scale is only one axis or if it does uniform scale through the transform. But anyway, we're gonna worry about translate right now. Translate is basically move. So when we use a transform in conjunction with a wave generator, we can put our value output here to the value of the transform. We're going to use our calculated value there. We do want it to execute, so that's all good. And then we have our values in here. So what the wave generator does is it essentially, you put in two values. So we're going to say our start value is 0, our end value is 1. That's fine. And then our duration in is ½ second. Our duration out is ½ second. I think I'm just so that we can see this a little more easily, I'm going to slow those down a little bit. So 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out, and then let's make this a little bit bigger too. That's going to go 5. And then you can select some tween in and tween out here. So this kind of manipulates how the values will change. So I'm going to try and explain this as quickly and easily as possible. But if you think about it basically, so we set 0 to 5. If it's a linear, linear, then it's going to, at the same rate of speed, go from 0 to 5, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom, there. Now, if we do kind of like a quad ease in, and you can find, if you go online, you can find kind of visual representations of these, which are really nice if you don't know what each one of these does. And there's a ton of these different tween options in here. So I definitely recommend trying to find one of those sources online. They're pretty easily to find that just visualize these changes. So basically what quad ease in is going to do is it's going to say at the start, the values are going to change slower than they do at the end. So it's going to kind of slowly ease in, and then the further out it's going to get, it's going to move faster until boom, it's going to hit 5. So it's a little more of an ease. It's shoom, shoom. And then same with the out, you can put it on the out as well. And now let's take our transform here. We're going to apply it to this object. Let's take this HypeHype. We're going to glue it to this object because I think right now those are just... and then we want this executing, yes, and we're going to loop it. So essentially, if we don't loop it, we just execute it once, it's going to go 0 to 5, and then it's going to come back, 5 back to 0. So you got 2 seconds in, 0 to 5, 2 seconds out, 5 back to 0. 4 seconds total. So if we don't have loop and we play this, should do it once. Wow, that was funky. Let's not make this a dynamic object. Let's make this static, and we're gonna make it kinematic. There we go. That's better. So we see goes 0 up to 5 back to 0, right? Great, perfect. That is wave generator with a force. Now, the dope thing about vector transform is even if you don't want to manipulate all three of the axes at once, it's just a little bit easier because it basically has the wave generator built into it, right? So now we're saying we're going to do local transform here just to make this easy. So we want to do that exact same movement that we just did, 0 to 5 back to 0. So we're going to go Y here to 5. Now the one difference that we're going to have here is with the vector transform, it's only going to do the one, right? So in the wave transform, it does the full wave. It goes doop and then it comes back again. In the vector transform, we're going to set our duration here to 2 seconds. And now we're going to get that first 0 to 5, but then after the 5, it's going to stop. And if we put it on loop, it's not going to come back again. It's going to actually do that animation again. So in this case, we're going to go from 0 to 5, and then when it loops, it's going to go 5 to 10. It's basically going to add another 5, and then it's going to keep doing that, and the thing will just keep going in that direction if we have loop on. So that's one difference. If you want the thing to kind of go and come back and go and come back, it might be better to use the wave transform. If you want it to move in a certain direction indefinitely or one time or a couple of times, it's probably going to be easier to use the vector transform. Again, here in the vector transform, we have the tween, so we can pick all the tweens here, all the same ones that we have in the wave generator. And yeah, I mean, there's kind of more to it. The vector transform, in general, let's target it here to our box now. Let's turn off this wave generator and let's turn on this vector transform. Let's not loop it though. So now we say boom, and we can see it goes right up there, 0 to 5, just like it did with the wave generator, but it doesn't come back. And like I said, if we loop it, we're going to see it's going to go up, and we can see the shadow there is just going to keep going, because when it loops, it just keeps going up. So in this case, we might want to, for example, if we wanted it to come back again, we could still do it in a vector transform, but we would have to start manipulating these values. So we could say after 2 seconds, we're going to send -5 to that Y, and it'll come back down. Okay. So hopefully that answered your question. Now Ryan's got a question. We also have a question here from New Rubis. Asking when will HypeHype be available to everyone without registration, so just globally available on the app stores. The short answer is, I don't know. It's going to be a while. We're probably going to be in early access for a little while. We're probably going to open up to more countries on a smaller scale before we go big. But I don't have any specific dates for that. So if you want to get in on the HypeHype action, register for early access. Everybody gets in. Just make sure you give me a valid email address, and you will get in if you fill out that registration form. Of course, if you live in the Philippines or Finland, you can just download it from the store right now. We are soft launched, as they call it, in those two countries. So in those two countries, we are available just on the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. All right, now to Ryan's questions. Drag and turn problem from Discord. How do you make the camera rotate in X and Y by swiping? All right, let's check out Ryan's draft here. And I think this might be the last question, because then I do have a new jam to reveal for you guys. And we're getting pretty close to the end of the stream here. So let's first I'm gonna have to go to my profile, turn on my admin features so I can check out Ryan's drafts. And all right. When is the next Q&A? So I do this stream every Thursday. Every Thursday starts at 2 p.m. Helsinki time. That's 8 p.m. in the Philippines, noon in the UTC time zone. We on the Discord, on the wiki, we try and share links where you can find it in your local time zone as well. But anyway, every week I stream here 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and I always try and reserve at least a little bit of time for editor Q&A. Some weeks it's the only thing we do. We'll do full 2 hours of editor Q&A. Really depends on what other things we have going on any given week. But I try to reserve at least a little time every week to answer some editor questions here on this stream. Of course, you want to ask some questions outside of the stream. The Discord, great place to go. Editor help channel on the Discord is quite active. There's many people there answering questions and asking questions pretty much every day. So if you do not want to wait for my stream next week to get some questions answered, the Discord is the place to go. Oh, how did I end up here? Did I crash this app somehow? All right. Who knows what I did there? So where were we? We were going to Ryan PH's draft. I guess that's what crashed my crashed my app. There we go. All right, so now we're gonna go edit here. Edit. There we go. Okay, so if we play here. So you got X movement, but no Y movement. Oh, brutality. It's like a snowball gun. Nice. So let's see. What is the target? Oh, am I not using the live? I could have sworn I had the live build installed anyway. Yeah, so you want to aim more properly. So what is that object that's actually rotating? Is it this guy? We got logic on there. Where is your rotation logic? There's the drag and turn container, but you've applied it to something here, yes? There's a cube. Aha, I see it. It's this cube right here that's in the cone of the camera, I guess. Okay, so we have drag and turn. So basically, you just want to turn on this speed vertical. Speed vertical, we'll change that to 1 as well. And then, why? That should be working. I think there might be something messed up in that. Because we should be getting, let's see what's going on in the drag and turn. Drag this out so that I can see it. So this is, that's getting its amount from this. Yes, yes. And one of these is getting its value from somewhere here. There should be something getting, yes, no. Something should be getting the input value from this. Let's take a look in here. That's speed vertical. Where is that going to? It's going there, going there. It goes to this math operator B. Should be, is it this one? That's not showing. It's this one. There it is. Okay, B. So it's getting the 1 and it's multiply. That should be good. Is there something in this cube settings that would prevent it from turning? Drag and turn? No. Doesn't even have physical on it. This is keep behind. Yes. Yeah, I'm not sure there. I'm just gonna let's back out of here. I'm just gonna try this on a fresh hype here. So we're gonna take this. So I'm just gonna, because I know it's here, I'm just gonna grab, for example, the simple run and jump guy. Turn on our logic. We don't need the guy and we don't need the player control. We just want this drag and turn. We're going to put that on there, and then this is going to be keep behind. Yes. All right, so that's working. And then we go in here, change this to 1. Yeah, it's really fighting that rotation. Why is it doing that? Could it be that it's dynamic? Okay. So there seems to be the problem that the keep behind is only doing left and right rotation. I think maybe there's something has changed in the camera logic. I'm gonna have to ask the team about that. Let's just go and let's cancel this. Let's delete this. Delete this. Like if we just put that run and gun guy in, or run and jump, put him back a little bit. And then again, we're going to add that vertical speed here. I don't think that's right. Oh, yeah, something's not right there. But I'm going to have to ask about that one. But before I quit, we only have a couple minutes left. I know you guys are really hyped for a new jam. But there is one thing last week, Ryan, that we were looking at. You were having that issue where your value went below your intended value range, and it was causing your character to kind of like do funky stuff. There is a really easy way to prevent that with the math operator. So those values that you're sending, you just filter those through a math operator, and then in your output type here, you hit clamp to range. And then you can set a minimum to a maximum. I don't remember exactly what your range was, but let's just say it was like 0 to 10. And now no matter what values are going into this, it's never going to let it go below 0. It's never going to let it go above 10. So if you just like kind of filter all of your input values through a math operator with this clamp to range, or if they're coming through a math operator already, you change this clamp to range for your output type, then you should be able to prevent that from ever going below 0. Just a really quick solution there. Okay, and now with that, I am going to stop doing editor stuff today because it is basically the end of the stream, and I think there is something that you guys are eager to hear about, and that is going to be the next game jam for HypeHype. So, what is it going to be? It's going to be a little bit of a bigger one, guys. We have just announced globally. So, to celebrate that, we are doing the HypeHype Game Jam. HypeHype Game Jam is going to be a 3-week jam. So, normally with these bigger jams, we go 4 weeks. But the way timings worked out, this one was going to be better if we did 3. So you have 3 weeks to build. There's 4 categories here. And they're a little bit different than I think some of you guys are going to be used to from the previous bigger jams. So some of them will be familiar. So first we have remix. And this is a basic remix. So you can remix anything. You can remix a template. But the basic idea with these remix categories is that you're not necessarily making a whole new game, right? You're taking whatever was in the parent hype or the template, and you're using that to make your own level, to make your own thing out of it, right? Next up, we have playlists. I think you guys are all familiar with playlists at this point if you've been participating in jams already. Most of the recent jams have had a playlist category. This one is no different. So again, it requires at least 3 original, 3 not original, but 3 hypes created for the jam, created during the jam in the playlist. You can use, if you would like to, you know, if you're remixing from a parent hype and you want to include that hype in the playlist and it's from before the jam, you can of course do that in your playlist, but you have to have at least 3 hypes made during the jam in the playlist to qualify for the playlist category. Now, Remix Plus. This is a new one. And this is replacing what previously would have been the original hype category. So essentially for Remix Plus, this means that you have taken a template or a hype and you have done a remix of it, but you've twisted it, you've chopped it, you've screwed it up in a way to where it's a completely new thing now. You've added new features, new mechanics. You've changed it up so much that it might even be hard to recognize next to the original hype. Not necessarily, but it might be. And then, of course, if you are using the blank canvas template, that also counts as a Remix Plus because you're taking the blank canvas template and you're creating something wholly new out of it. But essentially, we looked at what was in the previous jams as the original hype category, and we thought it was a little too rigid, given all the possibilities that we have with remixing, with using pre-mades and whatnot. And we wanted to open that up a little bit more so that you could potentially remix another hype and still make something like kind of new from it. But that's the concept of the Remix Plus is you're not just taking the elements and switching them up a little bit to make your own level or something like that. You're actually still kind of making a new game from the elements that existed in the template or hype that you are remixing. And then finally, we have first hype. So again, we just opened up in a new country here in Finland. We've been available in Finland for 1 week now. And we want to encourage people to try out HypeHype, try creating and publishing a hype. So the first hype category is actually a lottery. You do not even need to make something super cool or that's going to really stand out. You just need to try out the editor, make something, publish it, and you will be entered into the first hype lottery. And there's going to be quite a few winners in that one, $100 each. Does it have to be Christmas theme or there is no theme? There is no theme for this hype. It is wide open. Anything that you desire to make, of course, provided it falls within the HypeHype community guidelines. All hype jams are, what's the word I'm looking for? The community guidelines apply to all hype jams. Yes, Remix Plus will count if you remix from the blank template. So there's no straight up what we would have previously called original hype category, because the original hype category was only if you remixed from the blank canvas. We wanted to open that up a little bit, but still the idea is that you make significant changes for the Remix Plus category. And of course, there are cash prizes for all of these. I'm not going to go into it right now. You're going to be able to see all the details after the stream ends. They will be going to the wiki, to the Discord. We'll have a jam page on 𝙎𝙎𝙬𝙬, where you can check out all the details. But there are multiple winners in every category. And of course, like I mentioned, many winners in the first hype raffle. So you can check all of that out. After the stream, which is now, I'm wrapping it up as we speak. So that was the stream for today. Thank you everybody for coming, hanging out. I hope I was able to impart some useful information to you. Hey, 𝙎𝙧𝙬𝙧𝙨𝙙𝙬, welcome to the stream. Unfortunately, I'm about to leave. So sorry you missed us, but hopefully we'll see you next time. That does wrap it up for the stream today. HypeHype Game Jam live now. Get to building. 3 weeks to submit your hypes. And as always, you are more than welcome to submit multiple entries. You can win in multiple categories, but the same creator cannot win more than once in the same category. And the same hype can only win in one category. So the same hype cannot win in multiple categories. I hope that made sense. Again, you'll be able to read about all of that on the wiki when the HypeHype Jam page goes live, which will be in just a few minutes. Whew, out of breath. That does it for me. I've been Shogun. This has been the HypeHype live stream. I had a blast hanging out with you guys. Hope you have a great rest of your Thursday, Friday, weekend. As always, you can catch me in the HypeHype app on the Discord. I hope you guys are all doing well. If you are in the States, happy Thanksgiving to you. Until next time, I'm Shogun. I said it once already. I'm going to say it now for the third time. I'm Shogun. This has been the HypeHype live stream. Peace.